Welcome to the last lecture of this series on principles with the training principle of interdependency. What will we cover in this lecture? We look at the basic premise of the principle of interdependency, the biological basis for it, and the practical application. In his book, The Way of the Fight, Georges St-Pierre, one of the most successful MMA fighters in history, shares his fascination with dinosaurs and cockroaches. What he basically said is, it is fascinating that the dinosaurs who ruled the planet for 150 million years got extinct, while cockroaches could survive for almost 300 million years. And what he concluded is that dinosaurs didn't have the ability to adapt, therefore got extinct, whilst cockroaches had the ability to constantly adapt over almost 300 million years. So what's the basic premise of this principle of interdependency? Number one, some training stimuli complement each other, whilst other training stimuli contradict each other. Hence, there can be a positive interdependence between training stimuli, and there can also be a negative interdependence between training stimuli. So, complement each other, that is the positive interdependence, whilst contradicting each other is the negative interdependence. What it means for our training, we'll get into that. What is the biological basis for that principle? The ecologist Haeckel came up with the idea of the concept of interdependence. And that concept means that in ecology, ecosystems are dynamically interacting with organisms that depend on each other. What's the practical application? We talked about some training stimuli complement each other, whilst other training stimuli contradict each other. This positive interdependence is also known as phase potentiation. You might have heard about that. So the idea is that all subsequent phases are potentiated by the previous phase. And I've showed you an example from my strength training secret course, where you can see phase 1 potentiates phase 2 and phase 2 potentiates phase 3. And I gave you one of the examples. In that course, there are multiple examples of maximum strength training potentiates power training potentiates speed training. But then there's also something called a negative interdependence, also called as phase interference. And that's not always talked about very often, but it is possible that training phases interfere with each other. So this could be an example here where phase 2 basically interferes with whatever has been built in phase 1. But then we have another positive performance boost in phase 3. But it can also be if training is planned suboptimally, that there's a huge negative interference. Bomper, in his book Periodization Training for Sports, came up with the idea of periodization for the annual plan and periodization for biomotor abilities. I've made it very simple. So simply periodization of the annual plan, which is basically you have a plan for a year, a competitive schedule, and periodization needs to be based on that competitive schedule, that you are in the best possible shape at certain moments. Or we have the periodization of biomotor abilities, where it's more about maximizing a biomotor ability and not necessarily bound to timeframes. Long story made short, when periodization for the annual plan, phase interferences are sometimes a necessary evil. What does that mean? Well, we have sports that require different qualities, and these qualities could be opposing. That could be a high aerobic capacity combined with certain strength demands, which not necessarily works very well together, but that is sport. So when we are periodizing for the annual plan, phase interferences are sometimes a necessary evil that we have to accept. But then there are also, if we are periodizing for biomotor abilities, phase interferences should be avoided. If that happens, then there's truly a mistake in the planning process. Which brings me to the third roundup. We've gone through the different training principles, and I've outlined that concept of training principles having a specific purpose. We started with the first three principles that are meant to elicit adaptations: the principle of an optimal stimulus, progressive overload, and a varied training stimulus. We went through the training principles that secure adaptations: the principle of stimulus and response, continuity and reversibility, and periodization and cyclization. And just now we concluded the principles to direct adaptations, where we looked at individuality and age appropriateness, the principle of increasing specificity, and now the principle of interdependency. So we went through all 9 training principles. Here we have it. We went through 12 lectures in total, which brings me to the end of this course. And if you have missed any of the lectures, no worries, I have you covered. If you go to my website, christianbosse.com/courses, you'll see it at the top in the navigation. There you will get all the videos, all the audios, all the slides from the presentations, transcripts if you want to read, and downloadables. And the best thing, it's free. You can sign up for it. There's also a playlist here where all the videos of these training principles are in. So feel free to check that out. Either go to the website, sign up, or go to the playlist and find all the videos. And don't forget to subscribe. I see you in the next mini course on training methods.